going to do a hypercar investigation. So of course, after the race last time out, Catalonia, I've decided to do a few more sort of events and yeah, combine them all into investigation to see which hypercar is the fastest on this game of the 21 cars which are present. So yeah, we're going to start off by doing sort of two sort of benchmark runs, one with the Formula 1 car and one with the Formula E car. So of course, the Formula E car is about 200 PI lower than some of these hypercars. So yeah, I mean, I don't really expect any of the hypercars to be slower than this car, but you never know because, of course, Top Gear track is quite a downforce heavy circuit, and you can see the Formula E car really slow in a straight line, and actually came across to a 19.0. So yeah, the first of the actual hypercars, we're going to be doing it in order from fastest to slowest. So in first place was Ferrari FFXK, of course, unsurprising because it is the sort of highest PI rated car, and it has more downforce than the Koenigsegg 1-to-1, and we've come across for a 108.5, which is a really good time around that track. Next up was the 1-to-1. Yeah, a real handful in the corners. I mean, I had to always make lots of sort of corrections just to make sure that the car stayed on the track. As you can probably see there, it's quite twitchy as well, and as a result, I mean, this is quite a downforce heavy circuit, and yeah, that's why it came second with a 110.222. So I'm well off the Ferrari FFSK there, so nearly 2 seconds off. Third would be the McLaren P1 GTR. Yeah, this car again is a bit down on PI compared to the other two, but again it is really fast, sort of in the corners. Of course, it's got quite a big win, but of course it is not quite as fast as the Koenigsegg down the straights, and would be 2/10 off. So now in what would be fourth place was the Ultima. The Ultima, yeah, full fast PI, and it's really fast in a straight line, but yeah, just lacks the downforce compared to the FFXK and the McLaren P1 GTR, and would ultimately be its downforce around this track, sort of going a bit wide around the final corner, and that will do a 110.5. So only a bit off the 1-to-1 and the McLaren P1 GTR. Next up will be the Zonda R. Surprisingly, actually outperforming the Koenigsegg Regera, which is quite a bit of PI ahead of it. Of course, this is a really good downforce car, and it just drove really well around this track, and would do 12.2. Unsurprisingly, just behind it was the Herrera BC, practically the same PI and by the same manufacturers. So it's almost like the sort of twin of the Zonda R. Of course, it looks a bit different, but it has similar sort of statistics, and as a result, would only be about a 10th off the Zonda R, and would come in a warm 6th place. 7th would actually be the Regera at long last. Of course, no straights really to flatter its straight line speed, and its acceleration is really not that great because it's only got one gear. So down the short straights, it wasn't really capable of really using its top speed, and through the corners, yeah, it's just pretty bad, and it just that's why it was 8/10 down on the Zonda R. Yeah, next up, just behind it actually, was the LaFerrari. Of course, the LaFerrari, the sort of the road legal version of the FFXK, so we'd expect it to do quite well around this track. It has quite really good downforce, and yeah, although it isn't quite as buffed up as the FFXK, it still went round to do a 13.2. So yeah, only just shy of the Regera's time. Next would be the Aston Martin Vulcan. Of course, this car very downforce heavy, really slow in a straight line compared to some of the other cars, and yeah, as a result, yeah, we lose out a bit on the straights, but around the corners would make up his time, and as a result, would actually get quite a solid finish, actually ahead of the P1 GTR. It was right behind it. You can see now as we go on board with the P1 GTR. This car has actually always been one of my favourite cars to drive. I mean, it's really nice to drive through the corners. I mean, it's not as good as the LaFerrari, but down the straights it is faster. You can see they're putting on a bit of a drift, and that probably lost a few tenths, but ultimately a really nice car to drive, and did 13.6, so a few tenths off. Another car which really impressed me though was the Spaniard, which is quite a lot of PI down on these cars, and even going a bit wide into the first corner, would actually only be about half a tenth slower than the McLaren P1, which is really surprising considering it's about 30-40 PI lower. So that was really impressed me, this car, and as a result would go on to claim the final of the top 10 spots. Next up was the Zonda Cinque, and this really performed above its weight. Of course, I think it's the third lowest PI car on the grid, and yeah, to finish mid-pack was really impressive. And yeah, I mean, the Zondas, well, sorry, the Paganis in general were sort of built for this track, in terms of having really good downforce. Next up would be the Lykan Hypersport, and although it is above the is above the Zonda in terms of sorry, it is above the Zonda in terms of PI. It ultimately it did beat a few cars which were above it, which is quite impressive. You see a bit of a scrubby lap, but overall it would do a 14.8, and that will put him quite high up. Towards the bottom now, we sort of ended up with the cars which weren't so fast in the straight line or through the corners, and one of them was the Veneno. Of course, a really nice car to drive through the corners, but you can see down the straights it was really slow compared to some of the other cars. And I mean, it's really overpriced in my opinion, £4 million, and it's not really the most special car on the grid. And as a result, that finished quite low down. Another car which struggled a bit through the corners was the Zenvo. I mean, you can see it's practically shaped like a brick, so it doesn't have much downforce, but it was able to gain a bit of time with its power down the straights, and that ultimately enabled it to outperform some of our competitors. And yeah, most surprisingly was the Porsche, and you can see I put a bit of a drift through the first corner. I mean, I didn't really like the handling of this car. I mean, it has quite good acceleration, but the top speed wasn't that good as well. Yeah, not the best lap with it. I probably could have done a bit better on it in terms of lap time, but ultimately I didn't think it would have been much better because it was not really a nice car to drive, and actually we quite a bit way off some of the other cars we tried, even the Zenvo for that matter. Next up was the Agera, of course the second lowest car rated, so we weren't really expecting this to do that well, but ultimately it actually did punch above his weight compared to some other cars, so ultimately did do quite well there, and would actually, as you see, cross the line and to do a 16.1. Next up was the Pagani Huayra, the lowest rated car on the grid, but would ultimately again perform some quite high PI cars and would actually do really well in terms of lap time. Only just actually losing out to the Agera, and you can see running slightly wide. This car not really that fast down the straights, but can actually make up his time through the corners and would get a 16.15, so only half a cent slower than the Agera, as I said. Next up was the Hennessy, and this is really bad through the corners, but was good down the straights, as of course, as you know, this car used to hold the land speed record for a production car, and I think still does. As a result, would make up some time through the straights, but ultimately it would actually lose out to the Huayra due to its corner speed. Next up was the Sesto Elemento, and this car, of course, not one of the highest cars in terms of PI, and of course didn't actually race race out, but of course still classified as a hypercar. Did struggle compared to some of the other runners, considering it's a bit down on power, and it is quite an old car compared to the others I think made about 10 years ago, and that would ultimately come second last. But unsurprisingly, bringing up the rear once again was the Bugatti Veyron, and although it's got a really nice top end speed through the corners, it is a brick. It is absolutely terrible, and as a result, it would, completely. It wasn't even close to second last, and would nearly actually fall shy of even the Formula E car, only actually out racing it by 2 seconds. But yeah, there are the results for the qualifying. As we move on to the next race, and sorry, the first race around Spa, and what we would do is 3 sort of reverse grid races and then 2 normal grid races in order to decide the positioning in the final investigation. So yeah, just looking down the grid, you can see sort of the positions the cars were starting in. The Koenigsegg Regera already trying to put the Zonda under pressure, but unlike in last video, actually wasn't able to get a few positions off the start, but would ultimately easily breeze past the Zonda going into Eau Rouge. Also holding on to a few positions was the Aston Martin Vulcan. Of course, the straight line speed would mean that it would easily come under threat, and as the Ultima actually ended up barging past the Zonda and actually ultimately got past the RBC as well, yeah, it was easy pickings. The Aston Martin was easy pickings for both the Regera and the Ultima, who were both storming through the field. Meanwhile, we had the Porsche, who was in quite a good position until he went wide and would lose a few positions as a result of that. Also, the Sesto Elemento was started near the front, but was already dropping back a bit. Meanwhile, back to where the action was, Ultima was basically gaining position after position, and that combined with the Regera, they were getting tons of positions on the R-Class cars, as to be expected because they're so much faster in terms of lap time. And you can see now both of them getting 2 more cars on the mini straight up to Pua, and yeah, there goes the Regera. He's going to overtake another. He's going to try to get the Hennessy as well, but that's just the Ultima to get past, and the Ultima's going to go around the outside. He's going to go not just the Hennessy, but he's also going to try to get the Sesto Elemento, and he actually is, and that's the Ultima well ahead of the Regera now. So the Ultima looks set to win it right now. And of course, the Regera is falling back into second, well, not second, but second of the P-class runners. But ultimately, as you can see, they're getting through the R-class runners so fast, but by lap time they'll easily be right at the front. And yeah, you can see that the Regera getting past the Regera. Up ahead, you can see though that is the Ultima, and he's already up into second place. So it's been a really good showing from the Ultima so far. I think only the Horror is ahead of him. So yeah, it's been a really good start for some of these P-class cars who've managed to get through the field quite quickly. And you can see also getting past a few cars on that mini straight is the Regera. Now it was a bit more of a struggle for the other three P-class cars. We were actually stuck in a bit of traffic. You can see there was the Koenigsegg, and also the Ferrari FSK is actually going to punt this Spanier out the way, and the Spanier as a result would lose a few positions. But you can see they're nose to tail with these three P-class cars and would ultimately go on to gain a few positions. A bit further back was there was a few more battles going on through the field as we just flicked through them. Most notably was the Spanier, Porsche, and the two Lamborghinis. Of course, the Spanier was much faster than these cars, but of course had just been involved in a few more incidents near the beginning of the race, and as a result was fighting near the back. At the front still was the Ultima, unchallenged really by the Regera. Even so, the Regera was coming under more increasing fire from both the FFXK and the McLaren P1 GTR. Meanwhile, there was actually a bit of a battle going on for best of the rest, and that would actually ultimately spell the Asembo in the wall, and the Hennessy would also have a bit of damage from that. Would actually go wide and lose a few positions. So those two were doing really well up until that point where they came together, and as a result lost a few positions. Unsurprisingly, the rest of the P-class cars were slotting into the top 5 quite easily. But there was still some battles going down through the field, and one of them was the Horror trying to challenge the Aston Martin. This battle had been going all race long, and actually they both breezed past the Lycan, who made a bit of a mistake, and their battle would continue as they came up to the back of the Agera, of course, which can't really keep his own through the corners, but can easily keep his own down the straight. Meanwhile, the McLaren P1 GTR was actually coming under increasing pressure from the FFXK there for the battle for third, and the Regera was still holding on to second, with the Ultima having a commanding lead out in front. And actually, as we skip back, you can see the Zonda actually got the Pagani Hero and was actually going to start putting pressure on the Vulcans. It's been quite a good race for those three, considering they started near the back because they're the highest P-class cars. It's been quite a disappointing race for the Bugatti, who had slipped back a bit but was keen to make his way up past the Sesto Elemento, but would ultimately one ride. I mean, that car is absolutely rubbish through the corners, so unsurprisingly would lose a few positions there. The final results, you can see the Ultima leads the FFSK, who actually got ahead of the Regera and the McLaren P1 GTR in the end. The Hennessy would be best of the rest, leading from the Zonda R, the Herrera, and the Aurora BC. Looking down the grid, you can see the Vulcan actually fell back towards the end, so I don't know what happened there. As we head on to Catalonia now, for what will be the second race. Of course, we had a nice race last time out here, and once again, the Regera gains a few positions off the line, just like it did last video, and the Ultima is actually going to close up to the back of the Zonda R. So both of those, once again, I'm sure will make light work of the field as they progress. Meanwhile, you can see the other two cars, the McLaren P1 GTR and the Koenigsegg 1-1, who's actually going to find his way past both the McLaren P1 GTR and the Zonda R and the Aurora BC, who've been overtaken, of course, starting near the back, but already being done by some of the P-class cars. And he's talking about the P1 GTR, he's actually got past the Koenigsegg 1-1. Meanwhile, out in front in terms of the P-class cars, it was the Regera, who was already past the Porsche, who wasn't actually having the best of races this time out, unlike last video. But you can see now the P1 was already been overtaken by the 1-1 and the P1 GTR, and actually the Ultima has been struggling a bit. As we skip on to the end of the lap, the V1 was next to full foul to the immense speed of the 1-1, which actually would allow him to pull alongside the P1 GTR. Was actually going to try to do a cheeky move around the outside of the Veneno and try to put a car between himself and the McLaren P1 GTR. Of course, last race winner. Last race second. He came third or so last race, the P1 GTR. So I mean, he's a force to be reckoned with. But you can see now P1 GTR once again closing up to the Koenigsegg, and once again they're going to have a little battle, but this time the Koenigsegg stuck on the inside. It's being hemmed in by this Spanier, but this will allow the McLaren P1 GTR to go up the inside of the Spanier, and that's him up into what will be 9th place. Meanwhile, you can see the There's a few more positions going on, and that's the FFXK who's going to go around the outside of both the Spania and the 1-to-1. So the FFXK is up a few positions, and now we'll start to hound the McLaren P1 GTR for what will be 7th place or so now, as they will make their way through the field. You can even see the Ultima in the background, who's actually done well to recover after having quite a bad start. But you can see meanwhile the FFXK, after getting the 1-to-1, is also going to try to get a few more cars in the corners, and just like the P1 did just in front of him, he's going to gain 3 cars in the matter of a corner, and this just shows how OP these P-class cars are compared to the R-class cars. Meanwhile, you can see side by side is the P1 GTR, who's actually caught up to the Regera, who had a really good start, but that would actually mean that the P1 will be the first of the P-class cars, but of course it's going to be nothing compared to the straight line speed of the Regera, who's actually going to move all the way up into first place, so getting 5 positions on the straight, using his immense speed to his advantage. And of course in the background you can see actually the P1 GTR has actually been overtaken by the FFXK, so that the FFXK is now moved into 2nd place of the P-class, and you can see right behind the Koenigsegg also chasing the McLaren P1, and just sort of dispatching of these cars like they're not even there. But you can see the Agera there right now seems to be the best of the rest. And yeah, talking about P-class cars, the Ultima has struggled this race compared to, of course, he won last race out, but he seems to be in 5th place, and he's quite a long way behind the Koenigsegg in 4th. But you can see he's going to use his straight line speed to his advantage. He's going to get 2 cars, including the Huayra, and is actually going to slot into what will be just behind the Agera. He's going to dispatch quite easily. So that is the Ultima back up into 5th place, and yeah, he is the last of the P-class cars. Meanwhile, the Hennessy was making really good progress through the field. Of course, the straight line speed really suiting the long start-finish straight, and as a result, he was near the front of the rest of the rest runners. Meanwhile, you can see the Aston Martin actually passes both the LaFerrari and the Bugatti Veyron. Of course, using his downforce to his advantage through the corners, which has really allowed him to gain. At the front, it was actually beginning to close up between the FFXK, the P1 GTR, and the Regera. Of course, the Regera not really able to hold on. But you see in the background there, the Hennessy was actually trying to get past, I think, the Zonda or something, and has actually hit out a bit, so he's actually lost a few positions. And as a result, you can see the Sesto Elemento, I think, has lost out a bit to the Lycan Hypersport. But meanwhile, the Porsche is trying to make a few positions back in the race. But you see, off wide as the Bugatti's on the line, it's actually going to plough into the wall, and the Bugatti's going to lose a lot of positions there after getting quite a good race finish in Spa. He's going to have a really poor one this time out unless he can recover from that quickly. And yeah, talking about recoveries, you can see the Spania GTA passes the Sesto Elemento quite easily, and that is the Hennessy also up a position. Meanwhile, the Zonda is still stuck. And talking about the Hennessy, he's already up another position on the Zembo, and he's going to try to get another position on what will be the Huayra. If you get around the outside of him, this will be up into 7th place, and after starting in the mid-teens, the Hennessy is up into 7th place. It's been a really good race for him in terms of making his way through the field, and it's sort of a redemption for him really, because he had a really bad the Hennessy had a really bad time trial run around Top Gear track. Meanwhile, the Zonda Cinque was also losing more positions on the straight. You can see he's been passed by about 4 cars in the last 2 laps down the straight. Really couldn't keep their own, the Paganis, which is why they're actually quite good around the Top Gear track, because they have the downforce, but they just don't have the straight line speed. Meanwhile, the LaFerrari had finally got past the Bugatti Veyron after being stuck behind him for a long time, but up in front it was still the Regera. Talking about the Veyron, he'd already lost another position to the BC, so after keeping these cars at bay for quite a lot of laps, he was actually doing really well. He actually lost a few positions. So talking about losing positions, that is the Porsche in the wall, and he's going to lose quite a lot of positions as a result, and his race has just gone from bad to worse. Of course, he had a really good result last video on this track, but this time out, he just, yeah, I don't know, he's fallen to the back. Meanwhile, the Bugatti Veyron's going to try to get back past the LaFerrari. Meanwhile, up ahead of them is the BC. He's actually already overtaken the LaFerrari, and as you can see, the side by side is the Veneno, who's actually going to be squeezed out. And you can see the LaFerrari is actually going to use the opportunity to get back past the BC, and he's also going to get back past the Veneno. And also, you see all the Aston Martin Vulcan's also going to get past the Veneno. Behind you can actually see the P1's actually going to get a position on the Veyron, and ultimately the Veneno is going to lose out again to the BC. So here comes the Veneno around the outside. He's going to try to hold it with his downforce. Of course, that's the only thing which really vouches for the Veneno is quite good downforce. But of course, as soon as we get to a little straight, as the Hara is about to show, the Veneno is just toast, and as a result, the Hara is up in position. Meanwhile, looking on board with the LaFerrari, you can actually see already it's been caught up by the front runners. And talking about the front runners, actually, as they're beginning to lap cars, they're actually beginning to get quite close. You can see actually the P1 GTR is actually only just behind the FFSK now, for what will be second position. And just ahead of them is the Regera, so it's still winnable for the McLaren P1 GTR. And talking about the P1 GTR, is going to open up or be a straight line speed advantage over the FFSK and will breeze past, and that will be P1 GTR up into second place. And you can see he's going to pass a further 2 cars, while you can see the FFSK is still only just managing to get past the initial car. And talking about cars to pass, now the FFSK has 2 cars between him and the P1, even so one of them is his road legal version, which surprisingly is actually going to make it hard for him to get past. Of course, the FFSK is the much superior version of the LaFerrari, sort of the track version. Meanwhile, you see the P1 GTR's dispatched 2 more cars, and the Aston Martin Vulcans actually moves ahead of the Hurara, which is finally beginning to move. Find his way falling back through the field. Meanwhile, Espana GTA is going to let the Regera Fast, who's still in the lead. And talking about Koenigsegg, the Koenigsegg 1-1 has been overtaken by the Ultima after being ahead of him by quite a bit. He just found himself boxed in, and as a result, lost a lot of time down the straight, of course, having to brake behind the LaFerrari, and of course he couldn't move across, and otherwise he would have taken out the Ultima. But the Ultima's made a slight mistake, and that's actually going to compromise the Hura, and that's going to allow the Koenigsegg to get past. And Koenigsegg, of course, still in the fight for 4th place, but ultimately he's been quite disappointing the last 2 races in terms of position finishes. Meanwhile, at the front, there's been a change in the lead. The McLaren P1 GTR has overtaken the Regera, so I don't know whether that's happened, but yeah, the McLaren P1 has finally overtaken the Regera, of course, which isn't that good through the corners, so it must have been through there which the P1 overtook him. But meanwhile, the Regera is going to go up the inside of the Regera, putting a lap down on his fellow Koenigsegg, and as a result will stay in 2nd place. But meanwhile, you can see behind, Hennessy Venom's trying to defend from what will be the FFSK. Of course, the Hennessy Venom's having a really good race so far in 7th place, so if he can keep this up, it'll be a really good showing, and of course defending his position for now against the FFSK. Meanwhile, at the back still, the Zonda R is crashing into the wall because, as I mentioned in the last video, yeah, the AI sometimes makes silly mistakes. Let's talk about silly mistakes. The Hennessy is in the wall on the final lap, so I think he's actually come together with the Agera, and as a result he's going to lose positions. And what looked such a good race, the Hennessy now finds himself in the wall, and he's going to drop right to the back, and that will allow the Koenigsegg Agera to take the 6th place, the best of the rest spot, and the Spaniard will finish behind him. Meanwhile, towards the back, you can see the Porsche finishes just behind the Bugatti Veyron, who will get his best finish. Meanwhile, the McLaren P1 GTR gets his first win from the Koenigsegg Regera, who has quite a good showing in 2nd. As we scroll down towards the bottom, you can see the Hennessy Venom unfortunately gets 20th place. The Sesto Elemento also having quite a poor showing. But as we head on to what will be Watkins again for the what will be the sprint race of the reverse grids. So this will be the last reverse grid race. We do the proper grids, and you can see already the Regera is gaining a position down the mini straight. Of course, this track is a bit more downforce orientated than Catalonia, with fast flowing corners, but still has a ridiculously long straight, in which definitely should suit the Ultima and the Regera. And speaking of these two, they're going to try to blast past the Hara BC, but the Regera is going to get slightly stuck and actually going to go 3 wide as a result. The Ultima is going to try to get the inside of both, but actually isn't quite late enough on the brakes and actually gets spun round a bit. Manages to save it, but it's actually going to come under pressure from the McLaren P1 GTR as a result. And talking about the P1 GTR, after getting a win last time out, he's looking really feisty off the start, and is actually going to go around the outside of the Hara BC. Meanwhile, the Hara BC is coming under more attack from the FFSK now, who of course started at the back, has now made his way up another position. Talking about making up positions, you can see behind the Koenigsegg 1-1 once again is dropped to the back of the P-Class cars, but is also making his way through the field. Of course, ever since the first challenge, which was the hot lap challenge, the 1-1 hasn't really done too well. Meanwhile, the Ultimate is also making his way through the field. He has actually been overtaken by the P1 GTR, which is something to add. And you can see, talking about the P1 GTR, it's already actually threatening the lead of the Koenigsegg Regera, who's in sort of, I say the net lead, because of course eventually these P-Class will make their way past, as you can see, just using a straight line speed to his advantage. But the McLaren P1 GTR looks set for what could easily be another race win if they can get through these cars quickly. But of course they only have 5 laps to do it this race. But here we go now. You can see the Koenigsegg Regera on the back of the Sesto Elemento and should easily pass them there. And actually he's going to try to get maybe the Agera as well, but he's actually going to back out of it. You can see the in front still, the Herrera and the Agera still doing well, but you can see the Agera's actually been overtaken around the outside. And also the Sesto Elemento's off, so after having a bad result last time out, he's had another bad result. But you can also talk about mistakes. You've got you can see the Koenigsegg Regera made a mistake there, and as a result he's actually dropped behind the P1 GTR. He's going to try to redeem himself. Up the inside he'll go. He's going to try to get the Herrera, but he won't quite be able to get the P1 GTR, and as a result they are already into the first two spots. So these two cars have been able to get through the pack really quickly. They've been 1-2 on the last few occasions, so it's been a good showing from both of them. Also, it's been quite a good showing from the Ultimo, who's going to be third place after he dispatches of these two cars. Of course, the Herrera is still fending from the Agera, so these two cars still doing really well. But ultimately, the Ultima is going to use his straight line speed to power past both of them. Talking about straight line speed, the Regera is actually going to close up to the P1 GTR, but isn't quite close enough to make a move. So it looks done and settled. The P1 GTR might actually get his second win on the trot if you can hold on to that position. Meanwhile, the Spaniards trying to make a move on the Zenvo as they all go side by side. It's going to be, you can see that there's quite a lot of battling for this position, but you can see that behind them also some of the P-class cars who've actually been stuck. So it's the usual culprits. It's the FFXK and the 1-1 they've been finding it hard to make their way through the field from the real back of the grid. So yeah, it's really going to cost them when it comes to the final standings. But on the brakes, you can see the FFXK is really strong. It's going to get the Porsche up the inside and move up another position. Looking up gaining positions, the Koenigsegg 1-1 looks like he's going to gain another one. So he's going to actually back out with his move on the Lycan. Meanwhile, up ahead, the Agera is finally going to squeeze past the Herrera to be best to be what will be for now P4, but will ultimately probably be P6 once the FFXK and Koenigsegg get past. But you can see the Zenvo is going to try to pull a move on the Koenigsegg, who's actually going to subsequently pull a move on the Lycan Hypersport. You know, as you look back for the FFXK, he's actually going to get up the inside of about 3 cars, and he's actually quite close to the 1-1 now, so it'll be quite close, quite interesting to see how that pans out as we head on to what will probably be the final lap. Of course, this is only a 5-lap race. Meanwhile, the Koenigsegg 1-1 finally heads up into what will probably be 5th place for now, and as he passes the Agera, he will be 4th place, and you can see the FFXK will ultimately pass the Agera as well. Meanwhile, in the midfield, you can see there's still a battle, quite a big battle, and actually that's the Sesto Elemento off again. So yeah, I mean, after starting near the front, the Sesto Elemento has had an awful race once again, and as a result, will drop back through the field. You can see now as we head on to what will be the final lap for some of these other cars. You can see the Hennessy Venom's trying to pressure the Pagani Herrera. Of course, this is for what will be a really good position. Of course, the Hennessy found himself in this position last time. Of course, before he crashed into the wall, but this time you can see the Porsche is actually going to dive up the inside of 2 cars, and you can see the GTA Spano has also lost out. So yeah, the GTA Spano also got overtaken by a few cars, including the Lambo, but they're going to go side by side, and so are the Porsche and the Hennessy. Of course, the Porsche is going to use its downforce to get up the inside of the Hennessy, and all this is going to allow the Herrera to escape and get what will be his best position finish. But you can see now the Hennessy is going to get the straight line speed over the Porsche and keep his position. So the Herrera is going to be put under threat again. And as you can see, actually, the Herrera has actually been overtaken by the Hennessy. But meanwhile, the GTA Spano has more things to worry about, as he's actually overtaken by yet another car in the form of the LaFerrari. And you can see he's got the Zonda right behind him. And as you can see, the McLaren P1 is right behind the Zonda, but the Zonda's going to actually get the GTA Spano, whose race has gone from bad to worse. And also, looking on board of the LaFerrari's perspective, can the Zonda gain the second position in the matter of 2 corners? Here comes the Zonda. He's actually going to box in the LaFerrari, and he's actually going to get him on the line. And what a move from the Zonda to actually gain 2 positions right at the end. And that was really crucial for the Zonda to make those 2 moves. So the McLaren P1 GT wins again from the Regera, the Ultima, the Koenigsegg and the FFXK. Right at the bottom you actually have the Vulcan, who struggled due to straight line speed. The Sesto Elemento, after many mistakes, still actually finished 17th, and of course the other positions as shown. And so then we headed on to what will be the first of the normal grid order races, with the fastest car starting at the front. Of course, my camera car getting out of the way right at the beginning. But of course, the 5 P-class cars starting at the front. But the Ultima straight away actually go wide, and as a result, he's actually going to lose position to the Regera and will be down to 5th, but would actually ultimately keep on to 5th place. from the Zonda, who's actually quite a bit behind. Meanwhile, the Zonda was actually beginning to already pull a gap for the HRBC, who was actually already under pressure from the Aston Martin. Meanwhile, the P1 was pushing the LaFerrari, and a bit further back you see a few more cars battling out for position. A car which had quite a bad start was the 1-1. He made a mistake early in the lap, and it was as a result down to 5th, behind even the Ultima GTR. Meanwhile, as we skip to the front, you can see once again the McLaren P1 GTR was near the front. He was actually in 2nd, and the Ultima has actually been in another crash and actually dropped behind the Koenigsegg and actually lost his wing, which was actually hampering for the whole race. Meanwhile, the LaFerrari had actually caught up to the Aston Martin Vulcan and the Pagani HRBC, what was shaping up to be a battle for 7th, with 3 cars involved. But meanwhile, at the front, the McLaren P1 GTR looked set for what could be another victory again, because he was pressuring the FFXK, who was actually making a few mistakes. So it looked like at the front there might actually be a change of position soon. And sure enough, you can see in the background they're at 1-1 off-roading. So it's not been a really good showing from the 1-1. I mean, I would have expected him to be quite near the front, considering his PI racing, but of course that's not the case. But you can see there the Bugatti Veyron doing a 360 after hitting the barrier, and once again just down black and downforce, he will actually lose positions. Talk about losing positions, the FFXK has run wide, and as a result he's actually going to lose position to P1 GTR, and nearly actually loses position to the Regera. So that was nearly a tragedy there, and you can see the Regera is actually now going to try to pass up the inside of the FFXK, who's actually going to defend his position around the outside. But of course the Regera is going to have other chances to get past through this next section. Of course, as they begin to approach the back markers, you can see that the Bugatti Veyron off again. This has been another really horrible race for him. Meanwhile, the Regera is going to try to go around the outside of the FFSK. Actually bashes ride the Sesto Elemento. Of course, didn't have much grip in that car, so as a result, has actually lost the car a bit and actually shoved the Sesto Elemento off. So the poor Sesto Elemento hasn't actually had a good result, but the Regera is actually going to keep 2nd place after using the Agera as sort of the stepping stone to keep his position. Meanwhile, the 1-1 once again is having quite a race all the way down in what will be 4th place, and you can see he's just making his way through some of the back markers. He's a bit far off the Regera, who of course is actually, we're talking about the Regera, he's actually gone into the wall, so he's actually lost the position, unfortunately, and that's going to lose his position to the FFXK, and he also might lose his position to the 1-1. You can see the 1-1 actually passes him, so 2 positions lost for the Regera there, so it's not that good at all, but he's already going to be trying to make up the ground. Meanwhile, all the way back in 5th, the Ultima 1020 is all over the place. Of course, he's lost his wing, and as a result, he's not really going that fast. Meanwhile, the FFXK was, although a long way off the P1 GTR, he was once again leading, would actually overtake a few lap cars, and that would actually provide an opportunity to the Porcelain 1.8 Spider, who's having quite an uneventful race, but would ultimately not quite be able to get past the Veneno, even so would try again. But yeah, ultimately the Veneno would defend, and actually, their battling would bring in the Lycan Hype Sport into the battle. The Zenvo ST1 was actually holding up the Koenigsegg 1-1, and that would actually allow the Regera to catch back up. So the Regera has been really outperforming the 1-1, as you can see, as they both pass the Zenvo. But you can see now the Koenigsegg 1-1 is going to be compromised on the inside line, and once again the Regera moves into 3rd place and ahead of the 1-1. So the 1-1's really been overshadowed ever since the hot laps by the Regera. And as a result, you can see the Regera's actually won right though, so me singing its praises, and as a result he's actually going to rejoin behind the 1-1, who actually gets back past. But talking about the 1-1, of course he doesn't have the best grip, and as a result he's going to go wide himself, and that's surely going to allow the Regera back past. So it's almost like these guys don't want the podium position, they just keep trading positions. Meanwhile at the back, once again, the Bugatti Veyron all over the place, and was actually closing up to the Horror, but would make another mistake, and would mean he would drop even further back at the back of the field. Also, there was quite a, the 2 fastest cars on the grid in terms of straight line speed were also battling it out, although Hennessy was being lapped. And also, right at the back was the Sesto Elemento, who was keen to get some redemption after being overtaken by the Agera near the beginning of the race, but also they had the Ultima catching up to them, so it was only a matter of time before they had to let him through. Towards the end, we see the Porsche going a bit off-roading, and his race was going from bad to worse, as he would actually lose a position to Lycan Hypersport as a result. But surprisingly, didn't lose more. But at the end, would actually go into the wall after not even looking where he was going, and yeah, as a result, would rejoin behind another car. So it wasn't really looking to be a good sort of investigation for him. Meanwhile, at the front, it would be the P1 GTR, who would go on to take his third victory in a row, closely followed by the FFXK, and the Regera would claim the final podium spot just ahead of the 1-1. So you can see there the Regera getting another consistent podium, because the FFXK, P1 GTR, and the Regera being near the front quite a lot of times. Meanwhile, in 5th place, actually quite surprisingly, was the Ultima. After doing quite well in some other races, he found himself near the back. Meanwhile, the 2 Zondas found themselves behind them. As you see, the finished cars just sort of listed the track. And also, just starting the final lap was the Porsche, and of course the Bugatti Veyron at the back of the field. And as it would finish, it would be the Porsche holding on from the Sesto Rendimento, and yeah, the Bugatti Veyron, another really bad race, would definitely cement his position at the bottom of the standings with 1 race to go. And yeah, looking at the results, the McLaren P1 GTR dominates for the 3rd race in a row from the Ferrari FFXK, from the both Koenigsegg's, the Regera once again beating the 1-1. The Ultima had quite a bad showing. The Aston Martin Vulcan also had quite a good showing in 8th. At the bottom, the Veyron and the Pagani would line the back of the grid. Meanwhile, we would have, for the final race, it will be a sort of correct order race again with the fastest cars at the front. And you can see the Zonda are already losing position to the RBC. And talking about gaining positions, here comes the Ultima, who's actually gaining position on not just the P1 GTR, but also the Koenigsegg, and actually move up to what will be already 2nd place after starting 4th. And also making a move was the Regera, who would overtake the P1 GTR in a straight line, and actually close up to the back of the 1-1, just showing the speed of the Regera. Also behind them was a few battles going on. Most notably was the Lycan Hypersport, who actually forced his way up the inside of the Veneno, and as a result had gained the position in his upper place. Also the battling was the Sesto Rendimento, who was also trying to defend from the faster Zento ST1, who actually ultimately managed to defend that position. Meanwhile, at the front, the Ultima would actually breeze past the FFXK, and after coming 5th last time out, looked set for another victory. Further back was the Zonda R, who was actually coming under threat from the Aston Martin Vulcan. And also you can see the Bugatti Veyron looked like he was finally having a good race, actually passing the Veneno. Also you can see there's quite a lot of action going on in sort of the back. Meanwhile, in 2nd place was the Ferrari FFXK, still trying to, of course, defend from the Koenigsegg 1-1, but ultimately the long straight would allow the Koenigsegg to breeze past. Even so, the Ferrari was going to try to give up, to put up a fight, even so they couldn't defend on the straights. They tried to hold it around the outside, but ultimately it came to no avail. You can see still, as we head on to what will be lap 3 for these cars, the Aston Martin Vulcan was still pressuring the Zonda R, and at the end of the top 10 was the McLaren P1. Meanwhile, also at the front, you can see the Koenigsegg Regera would pass the FFXK to claim what will probably be his, I think, 4th consecutive podium finish. So it's been a really, really good showing for the Regera in terms of good finishes. And although he's behind the 1-1, he has actually, in this race, he actually outperformed him over the course of the day. Meanwhile, you can see as we head on to what will be lap 4 for some of these cars. Lap 5 for some of these cars, as the Ultima's already trying to lap some of these cars who are on lap 4, and the Ultima already is actually going to claim victory. Of course, this only is a sprint race, a 5-lap race, and yeah, the Ultima, after getting to the lead early on, will claim victory, but at the end is going to go around the outside of the Regera just to celebrate, and that is a well-earned victory. The Koenigsegg once again actually gets his best position of 2nd, and the Regera gets 3rd. Meanwhile, in the battle of the mid-pack, there was still quite a lot going on. As you can see, the Ultima on this sort of celebratory lap would actually take out the Bugatti Veyron, who's having such a good race, and the Bugatti Veyron, you can see, goes out wide, and as a result he's actually going to be overtaken by a few cars, and after it was looking such a good result for the Bugatti Veyron, he just wouldn't look and would end up going into the wall and would lose a few more positions again and would drop right to the back. So what was looking like to be a really good race for the Bugatti Veyron has once again turned into an absolute nightmare. And also it was a nightmare for the Zento, who also actually went off into the gravel and would also lose a few positions on the final lap. And yeah, would just about rejoin in front of the Horror to have quite a disappointing result. So yeah, the final action actually came on the Sesto Rendimento, just about as he's about to finish. He actually gets sandwiched by both Koenigsegg's who won their victory lap, and they both go around the outside of him. Yeah, the final results was the Ultima claiming his second victory of the day. The 1-1 gets his best result in second, and Regera once again gets a podium. The FFSK actually held up from the P1 GTR, for once actually didn't win. The Veyron once again was at the back with, of course, the usual grid order. So as you head on to the final grid order, you can see the McLaren P1 GTR well out in front, leading the Ultima and the Ferrari FFXK, which would ultimately come home in joint seconds. The Regera outscored the Koenigsegg 1-1 for 4th place, and 6th was the Herrera BC, just ahead of the Zonda R. The LaFerrari came 8th, just ahead of the Aston Martin Vulcan, and the Spano would round out the top 10. The Leica and Hypersport was 11th, with the McLaren P1 in 12th, Zento in 13th, Hennessy 14th, Agera 15th, Hyra doing well in 16th, Veneno 17th, and right at the back was the Bugatti Veyron. Anyway, that is it for this video. See you next.